I don't know how we got here, but it is somehow July. So I thought for today's cozy money chat, we should talk about how the first half of the year went. So how was the first half of 2025? Was it good? Was it bad? Did it go by quickly, slowly? It was kind of a blur. I don't really remember what has happened. So I thought this was a really good opportunity to sit down and actually reflect on the first 6 months of the year. Now, in these cozy money chats, yes, we talk about money goals, but these chats also give us an opportunity to chat about other things in life, to chat about work and health and fitness and relationships and all of the other goals we might have as well. So we're going to be getting into all of it today. I'm going to talk about how life has been for the first 6 months of the year. I'm going to touch on just some of my personal goals, so fitness goals, reading goals, talking about some other things that I have been trying to improve over the course of 2025 and how my progress has been towards those goals. And also, I would love to hear from you in the comments. How was the first half of 2025 for you? Was it also just a really weird blur? Or do you feel like it's just been a really good year so far and you're making progress towards your goals? I would also love to know from those of you who made New Year's resolutions, one, do you actually remember what they are? And two, are you making progress towards them? I feel like I made a vision board in the first week of January and I haven't looked at it since then. So I think that pretty much sums up my 2025 so far. But this is why this is such a good opportunity to sit down and reflect with you all on how things have actually been going. Have I been moving the needle on any of my goals? Have I been doing any of the things that I set out to do at the beginning of 2025 when I was a different and inspired and motivated person? I don't really know. So we're about to find out together. So I'm going to tackle more of the life updates, personal goals, etc. in the first half of the video, and then we will move on to money goals and my progress towards those in the second half. I will also make sure that I include chapters below. So if you want to skip over parts or jump around, then feel free to do so. Now, first up, maybe let's just do a little life debrief and talk about what has been going on in my life over the last 6 months. If you are a regular viewer of the channel, you may have heard bits and pieces of this along the way over the last several months. So I'm just going to give you the quick version, the abridged version, the TLDR, if you will. But essentially the year got off to a really good start. I started the year doing a low by January. Actually, that was super successful. I cut down my spending pretty enormously and was able to save a pretty significant portion of my income. So that felt like a really nice way to kick off the year. And I was also just making progress on decluttering. I was making progress on my project panning, trying to use up my beauty products. So I really feel like the first couple months of the year were great in terms of personal goals. I was cooking a lot of my meals at home, not really eating out, like not really drinking a ton of alcohol. I was focusing on getting more steps in. So yeah, I was really just focused on taking care of myself, taking care of my money, and things were off to a really good start. Now, of course, enter the universe. Some curveballs started getting thrown in about March. In March, I finally got a diagnosis for some health issues that I had been dealing with for years. So in some ways, I was actually really relieved to finally have a diagnosis, but there was just a lot of feelings. Like I was also really upset and frustrated that it had taken as long as it had and that I had been suffering for as long as I was dealing with the symptoms. And I haven't gone into a lot of details on the channel, but I think I'm finally in a place where I feel more just able to share because I've had a chance to kind of process it myself. So the long story short is that I was diagnosed with endometriosis and it's quite advanced. It is considered stage 4 endometriosis, which just means that there has been a lot of spread of the tissue. There is a lot of disease progression. And so it's at a point where it is pretty dramatically impacting my quality of life. And it has been for some time. I've ended up in the emergency room a few times over the last couple of years dealing with the symptoms of it and just largely have been kind of dismissed and it hasn't really been dealt with and it hasn't really been caught, despite the fact that I have had, a bunch of imaging, I've had CT scans done. And then it was only earlier this year when I got an MRI done that they actually were able to catch some of it in that imaging. And that's not even typical. Actually, they typically need to do exploratory surgery to diagnose endometriosis, but the progression of my disease was severe enough that they were actually able to see it on the imaging and make that diagnosis with a lot of certainty. So to be honest, this has really been taking up a lot of the last few months. It's been a lot to process. I've had to get referred to a gynecological surgeon and decide on next steps. And it feels like it's just been gradually getting more and more bad information and bad news over the course of the last few months. So it's been good in that I've had some time to process. Like, I initially had the appointment with my family doctor. She kind of gave me like the preliminary diagnosis and talked over some things with me. And then, I had a little bit of time to sit on that. And then I met with the surgeon, had like a 2-hour appointment there, and we really talked about options. And then, she kind of gave me some time to go back and talk to my loved ones and just think about what I wanted to do. So I am grateful in that I've had some time to process, but it has been a little all-consuming, just trying to make these decisions, really thinking about the future, and also just balancing the fact that my day-to-day health still has not really stabilized. We have not gotten the disease managed to a point where, my pain is being appropriately managed, and we are working on a plan and things are improving. So my quality of life has actually improved a lot in the last few weeks in particular. And I'm just waiting for surgery now, and they expect that the surgery will also improve my quality of life quite a bit. So that will be good when that time comes. But, in the meantime, it's just been a lot to process. Like, endometriosis can have pretty far-reaching impacts on your quality of life, your overall health, the health of your other organs. It can really impact fertility. So there's just a lot to process with it. And everyone is different. Everyone's case is a little different. It really depends how far it has progressed to. But just given how severe my case is, it's really just been a lot to think about, and I've really had to weigh like the pros and cons of doing different kinds of surgery. And then quite soon after that, in April, I lost my grandmother. Just been some things to deal with in the first half of 2025, and that's life, and I've been dealing with it the best that I can. But I'm not gonna lie when I say that things like budgeting and things like, my health goals and other things like that have kind of fallen to the wayside. I will say that I think one of the best things I've done for myself, and I actually kicked this off when I started my winter arc last November-ish, was to start habit tracking again. And that has just been a huge lifeline during this year so far. Even though it's something that I do imperfectly, I find that habit tracking is something that can kind of like pull me out of the darkness and pull me out of the depths if I'm really struggling. That habit tracking is a really nice way to kind of gently get yourself back on track with self-care. I do it with pen and paper. I do it with a habit tracker that I ordered off of Amazon, and it's really nice because you can customize it and add whatever habits you want, whatever it is that you're working on. So I have things as simple as flossing, stretching, taking my meds and vitamins, reading for 10 minutes a day, things that are pretty approachable to tackle, even if you are struggling with your mental health a little bit. And I found that even if I'm not getting perfect streaks, or even if I fall off with habit tracking for a week or two, because that has absolutely happened a couple times in 2025 so far, where I just stopped tracking altogether for like a few weeks. The nice thing is that this always feels like a nice, approachable thing to come back to and to kind of get me back into the swing of taking care of myself again after going through something hard. And I definitely have seen and felt the benefits. Like, I am much more consistent with flossing again. I am much more consistent with taking my meds and vitamins again. So even just little things like that, having it in the habit tracker does make it a lot easier for me to stick with. It makes it much more likely that I'm actually going to commit to doing these things every day, which I struggle sometimes with simple things like that when I'm going through a hard time, or even just with my ADHD. Sometimes tasks like that are actually really, really hard for me. So habit tracking has been a really nice way to just make sure that I am doing these small things to care for myself. When I started the winter arc at the end of 2024, I also wanted to work on increasing my step count. And again, I didn't want to set like a very rigid step goal. Like, I didn't want it to be this thing of like, you have to walk 10,000 steps a day, but I did just want to gradually bump up my steps over time. And that is something that I've been really successful with in 2025. So in October of 2024, my average daily step count was 6,693 steps. And so far in 2025, my average daily step count is 8,277 steps a day. And that has been improving more even in the last couple months. So my average step count in June was 9,508 steps a day. So we are really trending in the right direction there. And I love the way that I've been approaching it. It has felt nice to do it in a way that just feels organic and is focused more on taking care of myself and making sure I'm getting up throughout the work day. And one of the nice things that I do now that has been an easy way to add extra steps is that I go out for a little walk by myself over my lunch break without Lexi. So that just gives me an opportunity to get out even just for 10 or 15 minutes. I usually just walk a kilometer around my neighborhood, and that has been a really nice nice, easy, approachable way to add some extra steps. I'm also just trying to get out more, going for walks with friends, going to the beach and things like that as just, again, small ways to get in more activity throughout the week. And I think it's been really positive just because it hasn't been focused on like weight loss as an outcome or anything like that. It's really just been focused on, I want to have more energy. I don't want to be super sedentary throughout the day. I want to have better mobility. Also, some of the habits that I track are stretching and working out. So again, I got off to a really good start at the beginning of the year. And in January, I did 15 workouts. Then as time went on and life things were happening, the amount definitely declined. And so there were some months where I only worked out, 4, 5, 6 times. But even still, I think there's so much benefit in tracking because sometimes when you fall off the wagon for like weeks or months and months and months on end. Like where let's say you're in a really good routine with working out, but then, something happens, something disrupts your schedule, and then you kind of fall out of the routine. There's definitely been stretches in my life where when that happens, I fall off for like 3 months, 4 months or longer. And then it's really hard to get yourself back into it. I feel like the nice thing with habit tracking is even if it's only a handful of workouts a month, it still brings me back to the good habit much quicker and much more easily than I think I otherwise would if I were just trying to, like drum up the motivation by myself. Now let's also talk about some other goals I set for myself this year. And I'm thinking specifically about my reading goal. So I set a Goodreads reading challenge goal every year. And this year I set my goal at 25 books, which I know a lot of people read far more than that, but 25 books for me is fairly ambitious, but I think still achievable. So how have I been progressing towards my Goodreads goal? Well, I am on my 11th book of the year, so we are just a little shy of halfway. So I'm a little bit behind. I think I need to read another book or two in the next few weeks to get back on track and catch up again. But I really do think I will be able to hit my 25 goal this year. I also have about 2.5 weeks of vacation time coming up in July, and I'm expecting to just read a ton at the cottage. That's what I love to do on vacation. It's how I love to spend my time, and it is totally reasonable that I could knock out like 2 or 3 books just over that vacation alone. So I'm so excited to have some time off this summer. I'm so excited to just be sitting by the lake, lounging and reading. Oh, it just sounds like absolute paradise right now. Canada in the summer is just perfect. Now, in terms of what have I read, if you're curious, let's run through the list. So I read the Fourth Wing series for the first time. So I read Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and Onyx Storm all this year. I also read the first installment of the Country Club Murders, which is kind of like a cozy mystery series. And it's like a really nice, fun read. So I really loved the first book in that series. I've been trying to find the other books in the series through my local library and not having much luck. So that's why I haven't continued to read in that series. But I did really enjoy it and I thought it was a fun read. Then I read a book called The Tenant Class. That was a nonfiction book about the housing crisis in Canada. I read The Tattooist of Auschwitz. That had been recommended to me a few times over the years, I feel like, and so I finally got around to reading it. Then I read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This was my first Emily Henry book that I had ever read, actually, and I liked it fine. Like it was a fun read and it went pretty quickly. I didn't love it, but I would definitely give some of her other books a try. So if there are ones in particular that you really liked, then let me know in the comments. Then this was another book I found in my free little library, The Silent Patient. I had heard so many things about this book, so I feel like it was super hyped up, and maybe that's why I was a little disappointed with it. It was a fast read and it was pretty engaging. I just didn't think it was that shocking. I thought the first part of the book was quite strong, and then it just, like a lot of books I find, kind of go off the rails in the second half, and I just found that I wasn't as engaged later on in the book. Then yet another find at the free little library, The House Across the Lake. Again, another book that started off so strong. I was so into it. I was so engaged and I was flying through it. And then it just starts to get really, really weird. And it just went in a totally different direction. Yeah, I didn't love it. And then the most recent book I read was Flowers for Algernon. And I got that from my library, and it took me a little while to get through. Part of that is just because of like stylistically how the book is written for the first chunk of the book. And if you read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it just made it harder to like actually sit down and read it and like parse it and what was happening. So yeah, it just took me a little longer to get through, and it was a little bit of a slow burn. But I have to tell you that when I finished that book, I was absolutely sobbing, and I'm still thinking about it weeks later. So absolutely deserving of its status as a classic. It's really nuanced. There's just so much devastation to it. It's really tragic in a very unique way. It's really unlike any other book I've ever read, I think. So that is the progress on the reading goal. I have also been making progress on other goals I have around the house, specifically decluttering and going through my project pan. So if you're not familiar, project panning is really just about using up your beauty and makeup products. And so far in 2025, I have been able to pan 15 items. So that is 15 things that are no longer sitting in my medicine cabinet or cluttering up my makeup bag. And I really haven't been buying much in the way of makeup and beauty products either. I have really been sticking to that low buy and only replenishing things that I absolutely need to replace. So that has been very exciting. And if you're into decluttering or project panning, then definitely subscribe because I will be continuing to do updates throughout the rest of 2025. I also wanted to do a mini update on a video I made at the beginning of the year talking about 25 things that I'm no longer buying in 2025 and really just check in and see if I've actually been keeping my word. And I was pretty surprised. I've actually kept my word on most of them. There are a couple where I am having to break. Like I said, I was not going to buy any electronics. I think I might have to get a new pair of headphones just because my AirPods are completely dying. So there have been a couple exceptions that have cropped up, but I'm really trying to stick to the principle of it, which is just like really carefully thinking through purchases, slowing myself down, not impulse buying in those 25 categories. And for the most part, I've been really successful. Like some of the categories that I said I wouldn't buy in were no dog toys, no books, no candles, no fancy tea, no games, no bags, no makeup. And I really have been sticking to it. Like books, for instance, are a big weakness of mine, but I've spent $0 on books this year. I have just been using my library, my free little libraries, borrowing books from friends, reading things on my Kindle. And it's actually been really great in terms of just like decluttering as well and working my way through my physical TBR and the books that I already have in the house. So it's just been like a win-win all around. I also wanted to share a little Duolingo update. This wasn't a goal that I had at the beginning of the year. Duolingo is something that I've used sporadically over the years, but never really committed to. But my friend actually added me to his Duolingo Premium. And since then, I have been using Duolingo every day. I am currently on an 18-day streak, and I would love to see how long I can keep that going in 2025. So right now I'm locked in. I'm super excited about it. And I would love to see if I could keep that streak going for the rest of 2025. So I will definitely provide an update later on in the year and let you know how that is going as well. I'd say really the only other life update this year in 2025 is that I have started dating again. And that has definitely been a change. Like I have been single for about 2.5 years, and I really took a very intentional step back from dating. And so I had deleted the dating apps for like well over a year. I was just completely off of them. And so it was only earlier this year that I kind of started like becoming more open to the possibility of meeting someone again. And so I just became more open to like meeting people in real life, but also using the dating apps again. And that has been an adventure. It's been a lot. I feel like that is deserving of its own whole video. And I think I did a poll with you guys not that long ago, and that was one of the things that you wanted to hear about. So I feel like I will make a dedicated video just talking about what that has been like getting back into dating again in my late 30s after, you know, kind of having a decent break from dating and relationships, just what it's been like getting back into the game, what it's been like being back on the apps, and just all the ups and downs of dating in 2025, which if you're doing and you're in the trenches right now, then you get it. So definitely be on the lookout for that video soon as well. And let me know in the comments if you have any specific questions or things that you would like to hear me chat about in that video. Okay, now that we have talked about virtually every single other aspect of my life, I think we could talk about money now. Is it time? I think we should do it. I think we can get into it now. So I didn't actually explicitly make money goals at the start of the year, or at least I didn't make a video about it on the channel. I did kind of informally set some goals for myself. So I'm going to share with you how I have been progressing towards those goals. One of the things that I did was I set a savings and investing amount target for the year. So I think that's a really good thing to do no matter where you're at in your journey. Just setting a goal for yourself of how much you want to save in that year. It could be saving $1,000 over the course of the year, $5,000, $10,000, whatever. Everyone's situation is so different, so you really just need to sit down and think about what makes most sense for you. So I set what I thought was a pretty aggressive savings and investing target for the year. And I'm so excited to report that I am 68.1% of the way towards that goal. So I am well over halfway. Full disclosure, that part of the reason for that is because I did have some really high income months in the first half of the year. So I do get a bonus from my work. I got a really big tax refund. I think May was a 3 paycheck month. So there was just a lot of infusions of extra money coming in that really allowed me to fast track my savings. But I feel like this puts me in such a good place for the rest of the year. And I'm really confident that I will be able to hit my savings and investing goal. So that just feels really, really good. And I will definitely keep you guys posted as the year goes on. Another goal I had was to max out my FHSA, my first home savings account. This is my third year having the account open, and I wanted to hit the absolute maximum contribution, and I am on track to do that by August. I really was hoping to do it a little bit earlier in the year, but things happen and I wasn't able to max it out in my July budgeting video, but I should be able to do it in my August one. So definitely stick around if you want to see how I'm progressing towards that goal as well. And then another goal I had this year was to increase the percentage of my workplace RRSP contributions. So previously, I think I was doing the bare minimum. And so I made a commitment to myself at the start of the year that I would increase the percentage, even if it was just by 1% or 2%. But I really did want to start saving more aggressively in my RRSP. I have so much unused RSP contribution room, and so I would love to eventually max out that account. I am nowhere close to achieving that goal, but in the meantime, it felt like just bumping up my contributions was something manageable that I could do. And now I am contributing more towards my retirement every month, and that feels really good. And I'm considering bumping it up again one more time. I might do that once I have maxed out my FHSA. I also have to say, I just did my June budget review and then my money reset for the month of July. And as part of that, I calculate my net worth, and I actually just hit a really exciting net worth milestone. So that was also a great feeling to kind of mark the halfway point of the year to hit this milestone. And if you're getting started with figuring out your money, I feel like that can also be a really nice motivational thing to do, is setting yourself little like net worth goals. So even if it's just reaching net worth 0, you know, for a long time I was in the negatives, I had student loan debt. So even me just breaking even and hitting $0 was a huge accomplishment. So for you, it might be reaching that milestone of just having a $0 net worth. It might be reaching a $10,000 net worth. So I think setting yourself those little goals and milestones along the way can be super motivating and really help keep you on track when you're losing motivation to stay on top of your money in the day-to-day, because that definitely happens. And that still happens to me a lot too. So I find doing those net worth check-ins is just like a nice way of like getting a little dopamine kick and staying motivated. It also feels like the snowball is finally starting to roll. And by that, I mean, I feel like there's so much conversation around people saying things like, oh, once you hit 100K net worth, you know, your net worth just starts to snowball, and, you know, you're starting to earn more and more and more in investment returns and dividends, and your savings just start to compound and grow so much more quickly. And I have to admit, 2025 is probably the first year where I've actually been able to feel that in any way or tangibly see that. So an example of this is in my first home savings account, I have already earned more in dividends in the first half of 2025. I've earned $275 in dividends. That's more than I earned in dividends in all of 2024. So in the entire year last year, I only earned $177 in dividends, and I have already far exceeded that just in the first half of 2025. So I will be earning well over $500 in dividends in that account this year. And so it really does finally actually start to feel like there is some momentum of sorts happening. And that is really nice too, because it honestly just feels like I don't have to do as much heavy lifting. It kind of feels like my money is starting to do some of the heavy lifting for me. The last money goal I wanted to touch on is not so much a quantitative goal. It is more about money mindset. And I actually started to chat about this a little bit in my most recent monthly money reset. But really one of the things I've been trying to work on this year is just my money mindset in general, because I have a huge scarcity mindset when it comes to money. And I've sort of alluded to this in past videos, but I haven't really done a deep dive on it and I haven't gone into the details of it. But yeah, I have a ton of scarcity issues around money. And some of that is well-founded, you know, that's based on things that have happened. But I will say that as my career has continued to progress, as my income has continued to grow, and I am achieving more financial stability, one of the things that I want to move away from is being as nitpicky with my money. There was definitely a period of my life where it made sense to budget every single cent and be extremely diligent about sticking to a grocery budget and sticking to, all the line items in my budget. But I found that as more time passes, not only do I not need to do that in the same way anymore, but I've found that it's also actually just keeping me in kind of a bad place with money. Like, it's making me hyper vigilant with money in a way that's not great for my mental health, to be honest. I really don't want to be in a place where I'm obsessing about money or being stingy with money. I really want to have more of an abundance mindset when it comes to my finances. And so it's just something that I really wanted to work on more this year. Work more on letting go a little bit, work more on actually enjoying my money a little bit more, and actually even just flexing the muscles sometimes of going over in certain budget categories and being okay with it and seeing that, the world isn't going to end if I go $20 over, on a budget line item. And that as long as I'm still hitting my savings goals and I'm still moving in the right direction, then that's really the point. Like, that's the whole point of tracking your spending and budgeting, is just to make sure that you are saving and that you are investing and that things are moving in the right direction. And I know that they are, because I'm, already well past 50% of the way towards my savings goal for the year. So I know that I'm doing all of the right things, and I just don't want to feel this scarcity all the time anymore. I don't want to feel constantly stressed about money. So I'm really trying very intentionally to kind of loosen the purse strings, quite literally, and spend a little bit more freely and actually set aside money in my budget to do more things that I enjoy, or even if it's just little conveniences. And so I feel like I have made some progress on that, but that's definitely something that I want to continue talking about in my monthly money resets. And you'll see that when I'm budgeting my money each month, that this is probably something I'm going to continue talking about, and that I really am trying to, flex the muscle of spending my money and spending a little bit more freely, while also hitting my savings goals. And I would love to hear from you in the comments if this is something you've also dealt with, if you tend to have more of a scarcity mindset with money, or if this is something that you used to experience and you've managed to overcome it. I would love to know some things that you tried or some things that you did to help you have a more balanced relationship with money and to have like a little bit more abundance when it comes to this. All right, my babes, if you are still here, if you have made it to the end, you are my favorite. I love you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this mid-year check-in with me. I hope everything has been amazing with you for the first half of 2025, and I hope the second half of the year is even better. And if you have made it this far, drop me a little emoji in the comments below, maybe a little summer one, a little sunshine, or a little beach umbrella emoji down there. I really love hearing from you all so much. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.